Still ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business. Despite a successful career overseas, what made one bank executive choose home? Ramon Jocson, Chief Operating Officer of the Bank of the Philippine Islands, joins us to tell his story. You're watching CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on the exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Filipinos are always world-class, and that holds true in what they do and where they go. Throughout this program, we've been honoring our kababayans, toiling thousands of kilometers away to support their families. Now, we speak with someone who continues to blaze trails at home. Joining us now is Ramon Jocson, former OFW and now Chief Operating Officer of Bank of the Philippine Islands. Mon, thank you so much for joining us. You've lived and worked overseas close to 20 years with IBM, based in Singapore and the Czech Republic. What made you decide that it was time to come home?
Well, for me, Rico, it was about, every Filipino that works abroad, I think always has a hankering to go home eventually. It's about trying to give back to the place that you grew up in. It's also about, contributing to the industries here. So for me, it came to that point where I said that probably, it's time to go home. It's time to also contribute in my own small way, right, to growing the industries here in the Philippines.
I think you just know, when it's time to come home. What best practices, Mon, did you pack in your luggage from overseas and brought back to the Philippines and adopted in the operations of BPI?
I think my stint abroad, and very much like you, Rico, we were together. Very much so, the exposure to different cultures allows you to hone your management style. You become more adept at dealing with people, trying to draw people out or trying to be assertive. The Filipino culture has always been one of, passive, right? But per my stints abroad, I learned to be more assertive, and I learned to be more clear in my communications. I learned that in order to manage properly, especially in a global setting, you have to have focus, you have to have clarity, and then you need to set the tone. So for me, that's what I carried back here. It's the ability to do straight talk.
And of course, I myself, I was overseas Filipino worker for 25 years. You close to 20 years. Are more Filipino talents attracted to coming home to the country, Mon, and being closer to family? Or are most of them just wanting to stay where they are right now overseas?
Rico, it's a factor also of your age, right? Well, while we were still young and we were still trying to build our careers, it's always good to stay abroad because, it widens your experiences. It essentially, sharpens your management style. So for me, my stint abroad in different places helped sort of mold my management style. And for me, at some point when I went home, I also thought about asking other Filipinos to join me. Filipinos who work abroad also have networks, and they try to invite other people to come back home. And I think that makes other Filipinos who have worked abroad more comfortable in coming back home because of that network.
You also mentioned about culture and work style. It's totally different when you're working abroad. Should OFWs who decide to come back to the Philippines change their mindset when looking for opportunities here?
I think it's a little bit of both, but my advice to OFWs when they come back to the Philippines is to be an enabler of change. There are several things in our society and maybe in the way we manage here that we can readily change for the better. Adapting to essentially best practices is one of the things that I readily embraced. Bringing things like, for example, shorter meetings, right? More pointed objectives. Inspect what you expect. Most Filipinos are passive in the way they manage people. Also, high performance culture is sort of alien here, and I think we need to bring back those practices here in the Philippines, so that we can compete in the global market.
And earlier, I was talking to two very successful businessmen, Ernie Estrella in Singapore and Oliver Calma in London. And of course, us working overseas, no? What can foreign companies learn from the Filipino work ethic? What best practices can Filipinos bring to foreign enterprises?
There's an anecdote. I think most Filipinos who work abroad are very familiar with that, right? In the Philippines, we ignore pedestrian lanes, crossing lanes, but when we're abroad, we suddenly follow the law.
That's
right?
Correct, yes.
And it's very much so. Filipinos have a very good work ethic. And then when brought abroad and they're introduced into systems that are very structured, very disciplined, they can readily adapt. So Filipinos are very good in learning. Filipinos are very good in adapting.
And for our OFWs, Ramon, who have lost their jobs overseas, I mean, not all of them are as successful as you and Ernie and Oliver. What is your message for them who are trying to find direction in their lives amid this pandemic?
We just keep on trying. I think, Rico. I remember harken back to the days when you were just thrown to a new environment. You're new in that environment. Like you and I, when we were new in Singapore, we're finding our way, right? Just harken back to those days, and then think about what made you successful then. And I think there are several key ingredients there. You keep on learning, you keep on reinventing yourself, right? And I think if they persevere in doing that, they will be successful.
Thank you so much for this homecoming exchange and for your service to the Filipino. Ramon Jocson, former OFW and now the Chief Operating Officer of the Bank of the Philippine Islands. And this is a special episode of The Exchange for our kababayans overseas. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can use. News you can trust.